night, wiping the tears from my eyes, trying to, in this futile attempt to not look like the sad, drowned rat that I was, because my friend Edward had just died, and I was empty. Empty save for tears. It was 2004, and I had just turned 24 years old, and I was just made of tears. Just tears. When I wasn't crying, I was staring at the ground, just waiting to cry. Just like, you know that girl on the subway. You know, you've seen that girl on the subway that's like, and you know her, you've been her, you love her. You know, like, you want to hug her, but you don't want to invade, and also you enjoy just watching her enjoy her sadness. You know, like, it's just the pointlessness of life was consuming me. I didn't have a great deal going on, you know. I was working a cafe job on 10th Street and 1st Avenue, Taverluce Vino, where I was really good at making a cappuccino when I really wanted to be good at being in movies. But I was just sadness, you know, like giving people their cappuccino and crying with my cap down over my eyes, you know, enjoy. I would go home and I'd cry. I'd fall asleep crying. I'd wake up crying. I'd watch television. I just remembered that I would watch TV and cry, but recently I was telling this story to a friend of mine that lived with me at the time, and she was like, "You watched Faulty Towers on repeat." I don't remember this. It was just something, movement on a screen, crying. I stopped doing everything that I love doing. Laughing, smiling, eating, drinking, my acting class, talking, everything. I just became silent, crying, sad, subway, cappuccino serving girl. And it just because, and I know this sounds over dramatic because, you know, I was 24 years old, okay? Guys, you know, let me have my melodrama. Because I'd never known anybody that had died before, or I'd never been close to them. You know, my grandmother had died, but she had been dying, and my father had almost died, but he survived, and I didn't know why Edward had been taken. Edward was in his 70s, okay? You know, he was old, and my mother had met him when she was in her teens, and may or may not have had an affair with him. But that's neither here nor there. They remained friends for like 40 plus years, and she had a picture of Edward on her desk my entire life. A picture of Edward at his desk at Life magazine, because that's what he was a writer. He was like the quintessential New York City bachelor. He lived on the Bowery, 222 Bowery, in a building that's like a historical landmark, because it used to be a YMCA, then it was an X-ray factory, then William Burroughs lived there, and you know, like it was a fucking like artist den. And Edward lived on the top floor, and before they built a fuck all building next to it, he had the views from east, south, west, north, perfect view of the Twin Towers as they fell. And he was New York to me. He was the most important friend that my mother had, and when I moved to New York and needed a place to stay, he said I could stay with him, and so I did. My favorite sound to wake up to in the morning was Edward ripping the articles out of the newspaper with a ruler. You know, he'd just rip them out. It just, you know, weird, bizarre little things, and it was just like he would say these amazing things, like we watched Deer Hunter once together, and when it was over, he smiled at me and said, "I'm glad I was in World War II." You know, like he was a man, a bachelor. Like he introduced me to sushi and, you know, cocktails at 5. Like he was a great guy, and now he's gone. And I wanted to talk to somebody. somebody about how he was gone, and the person I wanted to talk to about how pointless my life seemed was Edward. Edward would have the fucking perfect thing to say now that he was gone and I felt empty inside. You know, he would be able to say anything that would just calm me. Every conversation with him was like an inspiration. I needed that. And the day that I found out that he had died, I was calling him to find out, like, what was that thing you said about relationships? What was that thing? And then the voice on the other end of the phone was, he has passed. And I will never forget the sound that my mother made when I told her that he had died. It was like this rush through her throat. No! No! Melodrama. That's the sound, it was echoing throughout my body. And I couldn't function. I couldn't see straight. And I mean, that is until about a week of this wallowing. A comedian friend of mine suggested, perhaps because he needed people at his show, but suggested that I get out of the house. Maybe I would feel better if I just got out of the house. And, you know, because I was like, you know what, you're probably right. You're probably right. You know, I'm dehydrated anyway. I'll get out. And, you know, it's a Tuesday. I'll go back to my acting class, too. I'll go back to my acting class. And you know what is not a good idea when someone important to you has just died, is to go to an acting class, guys. Don't go watch old people, young people, all sorts of people wrong for the parts that they're playing in their scenes. Do scene work for shows that are never gonna get cast in. Never. I love you. No, you don't. You don't know what love is. To be or not to be. Fuck you, motherfucker. I want all of you dead. Edward's dead. All of you guys should be dead, you fucking stupid assholes. Why aren't you dead? Edward's dead. They took him. They could have taken the bum outside his apartment on the Bowery with a bubble nose because he drinks too much. That fucking bum is still alive, and all you fucking actors are still alive. You pointless pieces of shit. And I'm sitting there. And of course, I'm not saying that. I'm just sitting there, and it's wallowing and wallowing, and the throat is just getting, you know, the crying. It's just getting up, it's coming up to my mouth. And I'm just staring at the floor, staring at the floor. Don't do this. But of course, sit through this, Julia. This is what you deserve. This is what you deserve, trying to join the land of the living after Edward died. How dare you? How dare you? And then the class is over, and I walk out of the building, and of course it's raining, pouring rain, the kind of rain that comes down so hard it comes right back up, and it's I'm gonna rain up and down, and I'm soaking wet. I'm gonna take a bus down the west side to the stand-up New York, and all I'm gonna do is ride the bus up and down Manhattan, because that's pointless, because that's what my life is, pointless. Let me just go up and down and up and down, but then there are the lights of stand-up New York. I gotta get off the bus, and I'm still soaking wet, and it's still pouring rain, and I'm standing outside wiping the tears. I step into stand-up New York. I take a deep breath, and I look through, and past the bar there's this square, and I see this black guy on stage, and I'm like, fuck, I've missed my friend's set. He's already in the middle of it. Wait. And I squint my eyes. Huh. And this woman next to me, she says, "Are you okay?" And I say, "That's Chris Rock." She goes, "Yeah." I go, "He's someone special." She goes, "He sure is." And I look up at her, and I'm standing next to Caroline Ray. And I say, "You're someone special too." And she says, "Are you here for the show?" And I say, "Yeah." let's get you inside. She walks me past the ticket taker and sets me down at a table in the back. And I watch Chris Rock do his set for, practicing for what would be the 2005 Oscars. And then my friend gets on later, and I catch up with him, and I have an okay night. And I know that I'll never remember exactly the eloquent way that Edward said this to me, but I remembered that night as I sat there in stand-up New York, the gist of what I was trying to remember. It was that it's not a very romantic way to look at it, but every relationship has a trajectory. It has a beginning, and it has an end. Sometimes it's a couple minutes, sometimes it's years. That night, my relationship with Caroline Ray began and ended. My relationship with my comedian friend continued. And I had to accept that my relationship with Edward was over. Thank you.